whoever you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm your host, Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight's first hour guest is our very own Carole Carle of KGRA's Paranormal News Update, and we'll be digging into the rabid release of UFO news lately, especially by the New York Times. And one wonders, why are they so fascinated with this subject now? So Carole Carle will be on to talk about that. In the second hour, we're bringing Mike Rogers back. He was here last week for our roundtable to discuss Stanton Friedman and debunking. And Mike Rogers of the Travis Walton abduction case will tell his story from his point of view and get a little bit more personal with us tonight and share some of his ideas on the paranormal and things that he has looked into over the years, coming from someone who had a very paranormal experience. I'm really interested to see what he has to say, and I think you will appreciate it as well. So normally I would do, some kind of brief news segment, but tonight is all about the news, at least the first hour of the show. So I won't be doing that, and what we'll be doing is we'll be moving through essentially a week's worth of news articles, with a couple that are sort of set out of time, but they all connect and all interrelate. And there is a lot of buzz going on right now in social media that there is something brewing as far as disclosure goes. And everything that we're going to talk about tonight ties into that. But I have to tell you, though, I still remain extraordinarily skeptical about that. It is kind of exciting, but as many of you know, there's sort of these wave crests that we hit every once in a while, and you think this is it, and then it just droops right back down into a swell, and we just don't get that beautiful pipeline that we want. So we'll see, but I think tonight will be exciting, and I think you can decide for yourselves, and I'd like to hear what you have to say in the chat room. And if you want to share your thoughts before, during, after the show, you can go to facebook.com/paranormalnow, Instagram @paranormalnow, and on Twitter, paranormal_now. And of course, if you want to check out some other side gig stuff that I've got going on Paranormal Pop on YouTube, you can do that. We talk about other things, not just UFOs, not just paranormal, but sci-fi, movies, pop culture. And as always, feel free to send your questions in during the chat room. I will do my best to pay attention and follow through with those questions. If I miss you, please don't be upset. Perhaps just type your question in again. I'll get to it. All right. So Carole Carle, welcome back to Paranormal Now.
Thank you, Alan B. Smith. Always a pleasure to be here. And I was really digging what you said about how we just want, it's that roller coaster. We want the punchline, don't we? Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, but it's always, tune in again next week, kind of a cliffhanger. And I guess, well, first of all, a lot of conspiracies would say the truth, the truth is being suppressed, that it's something that, is not just, it's something that's not desirable as far as having the public know all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And, the straight poop, as it were, this the new Navy protocol for pilots reporting, that's been a huge buzz. That's been all over the place. But before I get into that, this the idea of I don't know what do we call it? It's sort of it's not a news cycle. It's a more like a phenomena cycle or some sort. I don't know what it is, but it's sort of like we're all on the track of this mystery. But sans punchline.
I think there are two things. Obviously, in 2017, the release of the ATIP information really, and the videos really got the buzz rolling. And then the 1-2 punch, I think, was Avi Loeb, the Harvard physics professor, who theorized or has the hypothesis that how do you say it again?
Well, I've heard it pronounced various ways early on space.com when I was doing a paranormal news update. Oumuamua is that. Oumuamua. And it loosely translates to messenger, which of course is cooler than anything and probably why they chose the name. Yes, in fact.
The Oumuamua is an asteroid or a supposed asteroid. It could be space debris, we don't know, that passed by, and it was that cigar long, odd-shaped asteroid that you saw in the news and images of.
It was definitely an anomalous shape. It just didn't really fit with stuff that we'd seen before, except out of 1950s sci-fi films. Yeah. But in fact, I've got the Avi Loeb thing right in front of me. So before we move past that, let's just hit it a little bit. This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Now that's Inquirer with an Inquirer, not the Enquirer. Okay. Then came Harvard Astronomy's, I'll just read it, Department Chair Avi Loeb, a renowned scientist whom Time magazine named one of the 25 most influential people in space back in 2012. He, along with colleague Shmuel Bialy, wrote in a publication in Astrophysical Journal Letters that a thin interstellar object seen passing through our solar system called Oumuamua, quote, is a light sail flowing in interstellar space as a debris from an advanced technological equipment, end quotes. That is the, and then the article says he went a step further, theorizing that, quote, alternatively, a more exotic scenario is that Oumuamua may be a fully operational probe sent intentionally to Earth's vicinity by an alien civilization, end quotes. And of course, it was the most provocative theory, and it irked a lot of people in the community, but he stands by that.
It did, but it also still has traction, which I think is really quite impressive, and I think that's why I think it's given some courage to online journalists to write about this and to publish on it, the mainstream journalists, because it's like, okay, this guy's not backing down. It's almost, I'm not going to draw an exact parallel here, but it's almost like when J. Allen Hynek came out and physicist, it was like, it's okay, it's safe to talk about this. And I
remember reading about how that happened, and it was like, substantiation. It was sort of like, no, we are not kooks, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And though these articles that we'll cover tonight are on the safe side, at least they're not just ridiculing this and brushing it aside.
Right, that this cavalier dismissal out of hand, and along with the giggle and the snicker factor in mainstream news reporting, that's changed. There seems to have been a sea change in that, which is cool. The fact that in 2017 the New York Times picked up the story about the Tic Tac UFO incident. Navy pilot Commander David Fravor. I don't remember. Do you, Alan? Was he driving? Oh, there we go. Was he piloting an F-17 or an F-14? Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Or was it a 60? But whatever its designation, he was watching this. And what is left out of a lot of the reportage is the fact that the USS Princeton, which was a communications vessel, was parked pretty close to the USS Nimitz off San Diego, Southern California coast, Pacific Ocean. And they had been watching something, various pilots, ship monitors, radar, etc. They had been seeing something anomalous that behaved strangely in that same vicinity. They'd been watching this thing off and on for the better part of 2 weeks. Before ultimately, and
it's a one-off kind of.
No, that exactly that's. Thank you. I could have said that in just those few words, right? It was not a one-off. And it's just and that got everybody talking. Along with Tom DeLonge's people, and the fact that I think everybody was. It was sort of like Tom DeLonge. From the get-go, it's so funny. I can remember having to check to see how to pronounce his name before it was a household name. But it was kind of there was a long dry spell. He promised all this, and we just barely got a trickle. Everybody, the proverbial fire hose is what was desired, but we just got this little, coffee percolator trickling down stuff. And then there was new stuff. And I think for me personally, the biggest part of that reveal was the participation, the involvement of Harry Reid, being the dude who manipulated so that we could get that $22 million to fund the Pentagon's research. And the fact that Elizondo proves to be a real, in other words, people who raised their eyebrows and rolled their eyes initially at Tom DeLonge and his To the Stars Academy have had to maybe take a step back and say, perhaps, perhaps. How How do you feel about that?
I think that at first I thought, maybe this is just pork, to spend on a buddy of his and stuff it in a bill. He'll make some money. It's something that he's interested in anyway.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. He's been behind multiple investigations over the decades. So I think Harry Reid was trying to help out a friend. But then, I thought a little bit more on it and, watched the coverage. And I think that it was a legit investigation. Luis obviously, I think, is an honest dude, and just telling it straight. From what I can tell, and I think that this is it's just an incarnation of what's been going on permanently, indefinitely, since the beginning of the UFO investigation.
That's right. The title escapes my mind at the moment, but Edward Ruppelt's book. It's sort of like, okay, and it's sort of
it's an extension of Project Sign.
Yeah. Yes.
Going on and on and on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play a piece here from a show called G0 World with Ian Bremmer, and that was on PBS just this weekend. And I know I think you watched this video as well, Carole. And this is with Avi Loeb, and I'm just going to play an excerpt from that.
Oh, terrific!
Because I think that really sets the tone of what's happening. This is now normal to talk about, and I love it. And that's why it still drives me up the wall when someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson still just plays the drywall.
I don't get it. I don't
know what it is. Oh, it could be anything. Well, yeah, but come on, man, have an intellectual conversation about it, right?
Right.
Instead of just tossing it over his shoulder. So let me play this quick clip, and then we'll continue our conversation.
There are all of these planets where life, in principle, could have emerged.
Right.
For me, the question has always been, given all of those planets, not what the likelihood of life is, which seems to be almost certain, but what the likelihood of life at any given point in time is.
That's right. Indeed, the way we behave indicates that the lifetime of our civilization may be rather short, because technology evolves nowadays on a timescale of few years, and it evolves exponentially. And you can imagine that within centuries from now, we will develop the means for our own destruction very quickly, and we will not survive more than 1,000 years.
And we've only been asking these questions for
recently,
a few thousand years. So it's a tiny blip.
Exactly. And so that may explain why we are not seeing contact from other civilizations, because they are short-lived. But that doesn't mean that we will not find evidence for them.
Debris.
We might find debris from dead civilizations. We might find burnt-up surfaces of planets, civilizations that went through a nuclear war and destroyed themselves, or did not preserve the climate on their planet, or left some megastructures or artifacts that we could find. I call that space archaeology. Mm-hmm. And the importance of doing that is that we might learn a lesson to get our act together and not to share the same fate as those civilizations. So, in fact, astronomy can teach us not only modesty, but also a sense of urgency in terms of dealing with our planets and our future.
So I think it's really fascinating that Avi Loeb here discusses space archaeology.
Yes.
Because the alternative world has been talking about that for decades. I'm not putting down on this at all.
No, but absolutely. It's sort of like, wait, haven't we? I know this phrase.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And it's very cool. And I'm also stricken by, again, his use of the word urgency.
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
It is, because that's sort of, in a nutshell, that's, it seems that they're just my own, without being abnormally conscious of it. It just seemed, it was constantly in my bailiwick, my purview, to see all these developments and all the, not just the likes of Elon Musk, but all kinds of people saying we got to go, we're going to get off planet, we're going to do blah blah blah, and it continues. But it was definitely in the 4 years that I've been doing this, coming on 5, an uptick, definitely an uptick in, and that is the word, urgency. Yeah, which. Yeah. So are we talking commerce? Is this just a competition in commercial space, the commercialization of space travel, or is there some drive? And then again, is that drive something subconscious, and almost primal, or what's going on?
Well, that's the great thing about all these conversations and these discoveries, is that there are more and more questions.
Right.
And that's what's so fascinating about all this. I think from his perspective, what he's saying is that if we look out into the universe, and we know that approximately 25% of our galaxy has planets that 25% of the planets in our galaxy.
Yes, right, okay.
Are similar to Earth-like planets, which from all intents and purposes tells us there's got to be life out there. And so the question here is, well, if there is life out there, and if the building blocks are the same, wouldn't it be inevitable that eventually someone would reach an intelligent level? But where are they? And if we don't see them, then something happened to them. And I think that's where his sense of urgency comes in, is that if we don't take care of ourselves, get off planet like Elon Musk wants to do, like you said,
right,
then we're going to be nothing but archaeology for another species.
Oh, we become the fossils. That's a staggering thought. Right, back to the Stone Age. And then how do we tie this in, Alan, with some real big notables who are extremely credible people, certainly not what I would call lunatics with credentials. Where do we put the fact that they firmly believe that they are here amongst us right now, actively involved in Earth civilization, that other intelligence, extraterrestrial specifically, and then we're not even dealing with brain theory, string theory, and interdimensional beings. So you're right. Questions. How do we even frame those questions?
Well, I guess we frame them one question at a time.
Right, exactly. I'm sorry,
because you can't get the scope of it all. But I think we're starting to get a glimpse of the scope of it all. And so here we are. We're having these conversations. Michio Kaku has been one of those scientists who have been talking about this for years, quite openly.
Yes.
And if you think about Stephen Hawking, even though he was much more dire in his predictions of extraterrestrial life, he was certainly talking about them very well possibly existing.
Yes.
And so this is not new news for certain mainstream scientists, but it's now getting the traction that we've been talking about, and it's getting print. And when it gets print, the public at large takes it more seriously. And I'm okay with it taking a more sober approach. For instance, I'll just read a little bit from this article that came out. Was it today or today on the Washington Post? Again, another article in the past week that just popped on this subject. And this is by Daniel W. Dresner. Quote, "The term UFO automatically triggers derision in most quarters of polite society. One of Christopher Buckley's better satires, Little Green Men, is premised on a George F. Will-type pundit thinking that he has been abducted by aliens with opposing results. UFOs have historically been associated with crackpot ideas like Bigfoot or conspiracy theories involving crop circles. The obvious reason for this is that the term UFO is usually assumed to be a synonym for extraterrestrial life. If you think about it, this is odd. UFO literally stands for unidentified flying object. A UFO is not necessarily an alien from another planet. It is simply a flying object that cannot be explained away through conventional means. Because UFOs are usually brought up only to crack jokes, however, they have been dismissed for decades. And that's, end quote, that's the point here.
Yes.
Is that he's saying it's okay to look at this subject now. He's giving us permission, right? He's giving the mainstream people, and I think his fellow journalists, permission that it's okay. We can talk about this. We can write about this. Is it still a little derisive? Yeah, a little bit. But it's it's self-aware because it's talking about
that. Yes, that's a great phrase to put to it. Yes, self-awareness now.
So
yes.
Then putting you down because you talk about it He's just trying to differentiate. Yes, there are some people that are crackpots, but there's also a serious thing that's happening here. And this is one of many articles that have come out. And we'll get to the rest of those. We're coming up on the first break soon. But Carole, do you think that we are nearing a disclosure?
That is such a loaded question. And is it not? I don't know, with inflation, what would the $64 million question be now? I don't know. But I have to say that there was kind of like this intuitive gut level physiological stirring kind of thing that I felt. And it was I guess the word unsettling is the word that comes to my mind. And then just as I was sort of trying to absolutely confront that and, okay, what is this coming from? What's the source of this? And it's centered on the idea that we are all going to very soon now have to accept some, I don't want to say inconvenient truths, but they will be unsettling for an awful lot of people, even people who have been convinced and persuaded that there is something more, that perhaps we are being, that perhaps they are amongst us. And then what was interesting was a couple of close colleagues, without knowing how I felt, were making the same kind of noises. And that's always a kind of a, whoa, we're talking about what, the collective unconscious here, or are we talking about, zeitgeist? What kind of, what is in the air? So I don't, and then, even Facebook, there were some notables who were saying, I can't tell you what, but something's coming, kind of thing. And so I'd have to say that I'm feeling, but then again, is it that slow, quick, is it the hurry up and wait? What, where's this going? What happens now?
Well, if you had to bet $100.
Oh, are we talking a time frame?
Yes. How about, let's say 1 year.
Yes.
Really? Wow.
I think so.
Let's go into the first break. We'll come back with Carole Carle when we get back. There's so much more to talk about, especially an article that I found really interesting about hybrid bioengineered robots. And it reminded me of the reports of gray aliens that seem to act like robots, like little drones or droids being sent out on someone else's mission for them. This is Alan B. Smith for KGR Radio. We will be right back.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die. As you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the line. But I have seen stranger things, I have seen stranger things before. Oh, and I have seen stranger things get turned upside down.
Hey KGRA family, are you looking to show the world that you're a true believer? Well, shop now at thesaucerbrand.com. They've got something for the whole family. Jackets, hoodies, shirts and hats, and so much more. And now's your last chance to use promo code KGRA for $10 off when you spend $50 or more at thesaucerbrand.com. Your new source for official and authentic ufology-inspired essentials made right here in the USA. And don't forget, use promo code KGRA at checkout and get $10 off when you spend $50 or more. Believe in style and elevate your craft at thesaucerbrand.com. And for those of you going to Contact in the Desert and Alien Con this year, Saucer will land at CITD May 31st through June the 3rd, and look for them at The Alien Con June 21st through the 23rd.
Food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply, which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. SURFR.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. I'm with Carole Carle tonight. Always a pleasure to have Carole Carle on, and we're going to be discussing furthermore this trend in the media to talk about UFOs. Even if carefully so, they are still doing it more than I have seen probably since the Stephenville UFO incident. Has there been such a flurry of mainstream coverage? And it's funny, Carole, because we were speaking or chatting or texting earlier at some point. Maybe it was on Facebook, and I mentioned that I kind of get this inkling that there's going to be an event, not disclosure, or maybe it's connected somehow, but an event. It's utterly unscientific. It's definitely more of a gut feeling, but it is based somewhat on patterns of large scale UFO events. Because if we go, let's say Belgium, 87,
right?
Or was that 87?
89. I never can get that right. Yeah,
I think it was 89. Then Phoenix Lights 97. Then Stephenville 2008, and I think we're about due. That's just my sense. And then when you look at the fact that there's all this dumping of information, I don't know. I'm kind of feeling it. What about you?
Well, so that's the thing, and as you said, unscientific, gut level. Yeah. However, what I think for both of us, because we kind of track these things, it's a combination of maybe what our subconscious is tracking and storing in a different file than we're aware of, plus that gut thing, and where one stops and the other begins, who is to say? But I was thinking earlier. That Cheryl Costa, in her column for the Syracuse News, Syracuse New Times, in her, is it New York Skies, I believe, is the title, has mentioned over the past year that, especially since 2017, when she talks to people, when she is interviewed and when she interviews, that there has been a real there was sort of at one point the journalists were funfering, they were stumbling, they didn't know exactly how to frame their interview, given the fact that this now had legs. It had been legitimized, and she really wrapped that up, summed that up very nicely. That it was notable for something. Yeah.
So this is out of the Conversation, another recent article. U.S. Navy pilots and sailors won't be considered crazy for reporting unidentified flying objects under new rules meant to encourage them to keep track of what they see. Yet, just a few years ago, the Pentagon reportedly shut down another official program, that's ATIP, that investigated UFO sightings. What has changed? Is the U.S. military finally coming around to the idea that alien spacecraft are visiting our planet? The answer to that question is almost certainly no.
Right.
And this is where I come in.
Yes.
Because that's them saying the answer to that question is almost certainly no. I'm coming and saying that's where they're playing the dry skeptic, and that's cool in my opinion, because at least they're talking about this openly. So to continue, quote, humans' misinterpretation of observations of natural phenomena are as old as time and include examples such as manatees being as mermaids, seen in a Scottish loch, being interpreted as a monster. A more recent and relevant example is the strange luminescent creature in the sky caused by SpaceX rocket launch. In these types of cases, incorrect interpretations occur because people have incomplete information or misunderstood what they're seeing. End quote. Now, I am all on board with that because any good ufologist knows that you have to try to rule out any other possibilities. That's just the smart and sober thing to do. But I'm sorry, at least those of us who are kind of tapped into this community, I didn't see anybody freaking out about SpaceX rocket launch and debris, thinking it was a monster or an alien invasion or whatever. I feel like they're still kind of sliding us a little bit in this case.
I agree, and it's sort of I kind of wonder. I wonder. I try to picture these people at a party. Like, what do they talk about? Okay, and would they? And if somebody, we've been at those parties, and it's sort of, if the subject was broached, and it was off the record, how would they weigh in? What would that, is there some social imperative? In other words, what has happened to that idea that you become, the eyes glaze over and people begin to, as the phrase goes, back up and keep smiling when you speak of this? Have you in your out and about, have you noticed any particular change?
No, I don't think so.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Nope. So to continue on this,
yes.
I want to add this one other thing here.
Right, it's a packed article.
It is. From the Conversation again, quote, situational awareness is the military term for having complete understanding of the environment in which you are operating. A UFO represents a gap in situational awareness. At the moment, when a Navy pilot sees something strange during flight, just about the only thing he or she can do is ask other pilots in air traffic control what they saw in that place at that time. Globally, the number of UFO reportings in a year has peaked at more than 8,000. It's not known how many the military experiences. And that's really interesting, because you're just talking about Carole Costa.
Yes.
And she has put together this amazing amount of data, collected, correlated, and broken down. And I wonder how much she is missing of all these UFO reports that should have been coming from the military, could have been coming from the military.
Oh, that's fascinating, because as I recall, I think she spoke of New Fork as one of her sources. Mm-hmm. I don't remember that she
as well.
I'm sorry.
And
MUFON, of course,
yep.
Absolutely, MUFON. Sort of, I should say that, but it almost goes without saying. Yeah. Now that's. And then I do remember, and this was, I don't know, this is a little bit of an offshoot. This is a sort of a tangent here, but that Carole, she seemed to not be fully on board, as I sussed her voice out in when she was on your show. She was not fully on board with the idea that she could get or collect anecdotal evidence. In other words, what the witnesses to UFO events, what they felt, what they kind of have a feeling this was coming up? Did they some sense tell them to look at the sky? Did they have some uptick in psychic abilities afterwards, or dreams, etc.? Well, as you know, it was a big issue for me to hear her say that she didn't understand where she would get such information, because I came across a plethora of that in the UFO witness reports, first person that I was collecting for the news. So, what was your take on that?
Well, it was kind of funny because somebody close to me was like, "Wow, she's really resisting you."
Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting.
And
I felt like, that. Yeah.
No, but it was a good thing, because that's how she has to do it, because she's trying to just be, this is what I've got, and I can't just speculate on that and be placed in the faith UFO believer category.
Got it.
So she's trying really hard to keep her nose clean, as it were.
Right.
And I respect that, and I totally get it. And I saw her at Pine Bush last weekend speak, which was super cool.
Right. Wow.
And it was the same thing. You know, she doesn't want to speculate too much. Now, when I asked her about Beyond UFOs, the book by Freed, the study that they did, then yeah, she agreed that according to that study, that there is some kind of experience that people are having from seemingly extraterrestrial entities, and those experiences tend to go from either good to good or bad to good. And I just keep thinking about this, because I've talked to Ray Hernandez a number of times.
Yes.
And now with Cheryl, looking at things from her perspective a bit, and I started thinking, you know, is this like an abusive relationship? Because while they do say, well, my perspective on the abduction changed, my perspective on this experience changed, and now I see it for what it really is, and it's a great experience. One could draw a parallel, could they not? And this is no offense to anyone out there who has been abducted. I'm just postulating some ideas here. But one who has been in an abusive relationship, is that not what they do? Do they not turn that around?
So we're edging up towards Stockholm syndrome here.
Right. So
yeah,
you can take as many firsthand reports as you want, but if most of those people are people who have a Stockholm syndrome, then that kind of skews your report.
It does.
Your data, because now you have to, well, if you really want to dig down deep into it, then you've got to like sit them down, have a couch sessions, and that's amazing.
Right. Tell me about your childhood. Yes. Right. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. It gives me a little bit of doubt there, and it's healthy doubt. What about you?
Oh, healthy, definitely. We just can't. You see, that's the thing. It's what I loosely call bad forensics. We just absolutely can't. The victim succumbed to knife wounds. We're looking at, or actually we're looking for a knife, but in fact the bullets were the cause of the victim's death. So I'm putting this poorly, but I think you get my drift. It's bad forensics. We're going about it wrong. We're seeing only our preconceived ideas. We have blinders up to anything that could allow some light from another direction, a different perspective. And that's vital, because, really, who is there anybody out there saying we've got, that they have personally all the answers? And if they're saying that, time to go in the other direction, perhaps. But it's there has been, definitely, I think you and I both perceive that there is not only been a shift, but there's like some kind of a hum. I sort of remember getting on the bandwagon for about 15 minutes with the the 2012 thing. And before that, and before that, the harmonic convergence, which my funny sister calls the harmonica convention, because that's essentially, nothing much happened. But so what if something did happen?
No offense, harmonica lovers.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely not. Oh my gosh, no, love it. But it's just it's one of those, what if these changes took place and we just are not able to perceive it except in those little buzzy feelings, gut level.
Yeah, little buzzy feelings.
Yeah.
And that leads us into our next article here, which just dropped on the 26th. in the New York Times. Wow, what is that? Navy pilots report unexplained flying objects, by Helen Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Keene. Washington, the strange objects, one of them like a spinning top moving against the wind, appeared almost daily from the summer of 2014 to March 2015, high in the skies over the East Coast. Navy pilots reported to their superiors that objects had no visible engine or infrared exhaust plumes, but that they could reach 30,000 feet and hypersonic speeds. These things would be out there all day, said Lieutenant Ryan Graves, an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot who has been with the Navy for 10 years and who reported his sightings to the Pentagon and Congress. Keeping an aircraft in the air requires a significant amount of energy, he says. With the speeds we observed, 12 hours in the air is 11 hours longer than we'd expect.
Boy.
Yeah. In late 2014, a Super Hornet pilot had a near collision with one of the objects, and an official mishap report was filed. Some of the incidents were videotaped, including one taken by a plane's camera in early 2015 that shows an object zooming over the ocean waves as pilots question what they are watching. Quote, "Wow, what is that, man?" one exclaims. "Look at it fly." So this is the becoming normal news now. Of course,
right.
I mean, this is written by Leslie Keene and others that are familiar with this topic.
She knows what she's talking about. Yep.
Yeah, but it's still the New York Times are letting them on there and doing their thing, and I think that's fantastic. And these reports are coming out 1 or 2 a week, it seems like, the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, now see, that is a sea change, or I guess, I don't know, should we say an air change? That is an absolute, yeah. So what is up with that?
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic that they're being public, that they are taking these objects seriously, and that there is a reporting system that they're refining, it seems, for pilots. And what does that mean? I think that means that, let's say down the road, 5 years from now, there's another disclosure project event, and we have, we invite retired, congressional members to come and listen to pilots speak their mind. Maybe we'll have 5 times as many pilots or retired military personnel, because if they're in the military and we are talking about this in not just alternative but mainstream media like it's an okay thing to do, perhaps they won't be so ashamed to come out and share those experiences. Oh,
excellent point. Because it isn't just how will the community react. It's like they've got to work with these guys the next day, who may not want to come forward or who didn't see the event, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, the social part of that, personnel wise, and hopefully they will not be reticent.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
And if they approach it objectively, and I think if they approach the public dryly and objectively, I think people will take them seriously. If they're not coming out and just immediately trying to sell a book or whatever, if they just come out and say, "Hey, I'm sharing what happened to me. This is what it is. I don't know what it was. And now you can do something with that." I think that's where we need to be across the board. But now here's another interesting article from the New York Times, but not so recent. It's actually from 2017, but I came across this because I'm looking up New York Times, UFOs.
Yes, right.
And it says, "Don't believe in God? Maybe you'll try UFOs." So I want to get your take on this.
I find that just really fascinating. It cites the Pew, P-E-W Research Center. And apparently one of their facts was from 2007 to 2014, the percentage of Americans who reported being absolutely confident in that God exists dropped from 71% to 63%. However, a growing body of research suggests that the evidence for a decline in traditional religious belief, identity, and practice does not reflect a decline in this underlying spiritual inclination. And so this apparently now, I guess the Clay Rutledge gets the byline here, and I guess where he's going with this, my take is that the okay, it's sort of broken down, and this is really, a pop thing to do and probably not that accurate, but it's the stance of I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. Okay, so in other words, that spiritual thing, that if people if they find their religion lacking, if it just doesn't give them answers, for this world in which we find ourselves, maybe they're looking outside the box, and maybe that's the part of them that is now intrigued by this great mystery of UFOs. And the article goes on to say, furthermore, evidence suggests that the religious mind persists even when we lose faith in traditional religious beliefs and institutions. Consider that roughly 30% of Americans report they have felt in contact with someone who has died. 20% believe they've been in the presence of a ghost. A third of Americans believe that ghosts exist and can interact with us, etc. So the less religious people, it goes on to say, the less religious people are, the more likely they are to endorse empirically unsupported ideas about UFOs. Mm-hmm. The idea that there are intelligent aliens monitoring the lives of humans and all the other related conspiracies. I didn't get the take that that Clay Rutledge is bashing anybody here. It was a very evenly written article, I felt.
Yeah. Do you think then that many of us are just trying to fill a spiritual hole?
Yep. Yep. Because it's I don't even know how to put it. It's maybe the fact that, all the programming, all the messaging from mainstream media, sorry, Madison Avenue, but yeah, they've got to carry something. And it's sort of, we seem to have been led in this direction that is away from human things, human spirit, human, words fail me at this point. It's like we've lost touch with nature and et cetera, and all of those things that, are put into the basket.
Well, personally,
we've kind of lost our way in certain arenas. Yes.
Yeah. No, I think so. But I think personally the psychological aspect of this, aka spiritual, if you will, is the community aspect. When you are part of a church, right, there's this community that you are plugged into, and humans, we are a tribal communal species. And so when you have your tribe, I think you feel safer. And when that tribe gives you meaning for your existence, it's even better. But I think that's why I go online. I'll see like Meetup online. There'll be like these alien groups, right? People believe in this kind of alien pseudo religion or whatever,
right,
and they want to get together because it's not enough to just sit at home and believe in something. You have to get together with a group of people, and I think that's what everybody craves. And I don't think any one religion or another can fill it. I think you can't just sit at home and believe in a particular religion. I think you have to be a part of that community to get that sense of fulfillment.
Right, an exchange of energies.
Right. So we're almost running out of time, so I have to get this last piece in with you, the biohybrid robots. What do you think?
Yes, run that title past us again.
Yeah.
It was just more than stuck in my head. Go ahead.
Biohybrid robots built from living tissue start to take shape.
Biohybrid aliens. No, robots. See, I snuck that in there.
But that's
biohybrid. Well, exactly. It is alien to us, as in, the original meaning of the word. I just don't know where to go with that. First of all, it's difficult to, I don't know. We suspend our disbelief quite easily, those of us who are interested in science fiction.
True.
So I have to, I guess, unsuspend my disbelief. This is real. It's here. It's now. I just am, a little nervous about the idea who's going to be authorizing these robots. What will if they can do jobs that put human lives in danger.
Mm-hmm. And for the record, this comes from Live Science, August 11th, 2016.
And definitely a legit source. Yeah. Is this who's doing this again? Is it MIT?
Yes. And hold on, there's another organization I think involved here, but I can't find it. I don't know. We'll have to go back to that. Actually, no, we're running out of time. So
okay, yeah, exactly. So it's something else for all of us to Google at home, right?
Right. So here's the thing. I do think that if we are actually able to stimulate cells, build cells into a structure that we want, then if down the line you can build a complex enough cellular structure that behaves according to electrical currents that you send into it, can we not add a computer mind to that? And then therefore you have something like these little mini grays, these almost
exactly
bio androids, if you will. And one of the reasons that they're developing these biohybrid robots was because robots are so rough and gruff and hard. When they bump into people, when they hit things, it can be problematic. So they're like, well, if we can create something that has more of a soft tissue, then they're safer to live amongst humans. And I thought, this is so fascinating. This is just something that's happening organically, and that kind of explains why extraterrestrials may want to work with biorobots. Because if you're working in large numbers of both types mixed in all these different rooms, why do you want to walk around with this big hulky steel thing that can plow you
right
but Carole, we're at the end here, and
that always happens.
I love chatting with you. I know it does. So I'm sure we will be able to do this again in the future, but before we go, we have to remind everybody about your show that's coming very soon.
We have it on
curtain.
We have it on Under the Obsidian Curtain is we have it on the best authority is in the pipeline. And I'm so jazzed. Words fail me again. It's going to be amazing. We're going to see what is, under that shiny black, as in redacted, etc. And it can go in many, many directions. So I'm just real excited.
All right. Well, I'm excited. We'll keep announcing it here, and then as soon as we get the date, we will share it far and wide. In the meantime, check out Paranormal News Update with Carole Carle on KGRA.com. And thanks, Carole.
Hey, bless your heart, Alan. Carry on. Have a great time.
You too. Have a good night. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. We'll be right back with Mike Rogers of the Travis Walton abduction case. Stand by.
Hey, KGRA family, are you looking to show the world that you're a true believer? Well, shop now at thesaucerbrand.com. They've got something for the whole family. Jackets, hoodies, shirts, and hats, and so much more. And now's your last chance to use promo code KGRA for $10 off when you spend $50 or more at thesaucerbrand.com. Your new source for official and authentic ufology-inspired essentials made right here in the USA. And don't forget, use promo code KGRA at checkout and get $10 off when you spend $50 or more. Believe in style and elevate your craft at thesaucerbrand.com. And for those of you going to Contact in the Desert and Alien Con this year, Saucer will land at CITD May 31st through June the 3rd, and look for them at The Alien Con June 21st through the 23rd.
Hi, this is AJ, and I would love to invite you to tune into my show, Soul Wanderings, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, where we visit with a new guest each week about their authentic journey through this human experience. So come wander with us Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, with Soul Wanderings, exclusively on KGRAradio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Richard Dolan announcing a new exclusive content website, richarddolanmembers.com. I've been working on this for a long time. Unique weekly podcasts that you won't hear anywhere else, fresh articles and blog posts, a special video series entitled Off the Cuff with Richard Dolan, regular Ask Me Anything style live chat sessions, and more. This is a full-featured member site where you will get my insights, my updates, and be able to interact directly with me. To learn more, go to richarddolanmembers.com.
Live alternative talk radio in over 125 countries across Mother Earth. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. Man, that was a great conversation with Carole Carle. Love having her on. And I can't wait till her show comes on the air behind the obsidian curtain. Now a returning champion is Mike Rogers. He was with us last week during the roundtable discussion with Kathleen Martin and Peter Robbins, which, as some of you may know, was originally supposed to have included Stanton Friedman. So instead, we dedicated the first hour and so of that show to the memory of Stanton. And the rest of the show was discussing debunkers. We did talk a little bit about Mike's Phoenix Lights theory, that there was a wind directional current that was a major cause of a misunderstanding of the Phoenix Lights, and that perhaps this was just a giant, not a dirigible, but a floating craft or something that was really just drifting on the wind, which I think will, ruffle some feathers out there for those who want to believe it's a giant UFO craft. Because you know what? It might be. What if it was just a giant UFO craft that went perfectly with that wind flow in that direction? But Mike, welcome back. Do you want to say anything else about that now, or do you want to just move on with the conversation?
I can just go with the conversation. Whatever you want to ask, what you want to do is all right with me.
All right, so we'll revisit that at the end if we have time. But I wanted to get to know more about you, Mike, because you had this experience when Travis Walton was abducted, and you all were very young at the time. This was 1975. You were a witness. You were friends with Travis, and you were his foreman in the woods at the time. So when anyone has any kind of paranormal experience, it really does shift, I think, the way they view the world. And I wonder, how did your perspective on the world shift after that event?
Well, naturally, that shifted my thinking in a lot of ways. First of all, I wasn't so young. I was 28 at the time. Travis was 22, I believe. Mm-hmm. And Ken Peterson was 1 year old. He was 23, and everybody else went on down. Steve Pierce was only 17. He had fibbed to me about his age to get the job, but, it worked out. I just didn't want to get in trouble. Anyway, from an early age, as long as I can remember way back, my dad hounded me on reality. Mm-hmm. He was a realist, and He had been through World War II. He had been on 3 of the major engagements in the Pacific, including Iwo Jima. And as everybody knows, anybody that's even been through one of those particular skirmishes, they're lucky to come home.
Yeah.
And it affected him. He
And so
became an alcoholic, a periodic alcoholic. He went on binges, and he'd stay sober for 2 weeks, a month, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he'd go on a 3 or 4 day binge, and he just couldn't seem to break free of that. So I understood that. But for me, he taught me some very, very important lessons, all of which was based on reality. You know, we were loggers, and loggers can't fantasize too much. You get smashed, you know. You have to take reality pretty serious when you're in that kind of business.
It's no joke. It's no joke. You can't let your mind wander. Yeah.
You know, my dad, just give you an example here, real quick here. There were a lot of young people on our crew, and anywhere from 5 to a dozen during different periods. And invariably, 1 or 2 of these guys would come up with some theory about how reality isn't real. It's a parallel universe, or, you know, there's also so many different theories, none of which, of course, have ever been proven or even really substantiated. But he would have this thing he would say when he'd heard enough. He'd say, hey, if you believe any of this is one whit short of solid reality, I invite you to run as fast as you can down this hill and slam your head into one of those soft little questionable pines. When you wake up in the hospital after 15 stitches with a splitting headache, tell me then how it isn't real. I never took that test. Nobody needed to.
Uh-huh.
Only the new on the crew would come up with some tenuous theory.
Well, you know, there's something about that hardened kind of realism. Someone in my family told me a story when I was growing up. I don't know if they want me to share who they are, so I won't. But their father, when they were, I think maybe 12, 13, 8, 9, I'm not sure what the age was, but a kid. And he was looking at his father smoking a cigarette and pining, wondering. And his father just turns on him like, hey, you want to know what this is like, or something like that? Hands him the cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
This little kid puffs. And then, you know, just does like a in the mouth out again. He's like, no, that's not how you do it. Take a real big pull and then breathe in real hard. And this kid turns green and becomes nauseous. I don't know, maybe he did or did not throw up, but that was his hard-liner lesson for him. And he never craved a cigarette.
Well, you know what? I've never been a smoker because my dad did the same exact thing.
No way. That is so funny. Was that a trending thing back then, or is that just coincidence? I wonder.
No, it has to be a father that is dead set on reality and teaching his son the lessons of life, you know.
Yeah.
Some fathers are that way and some aren't. And I was just one of the lucky ones that had a dad that was quite a realist.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how does that realism play into how you think now?
Big time. Especially recently. You know, when Travis Walton was abducted, that was very powerful. It was an eye-opener. And I'd never been so scared before that in my life. And I'd done a lot of things that people should be scared of. And boy, that just about did it. That changed my thinking about reality. It told me that there are things in reality, not, you know, whimsicalness, just reality, that can be very different than what you've always believed. And of course, there was nothing about that incident that was at all short of totally real, totally provable. All 7 of us eventually, 6 originally passed lie detector tests. Alan Dallas did not, but that was because he was very concerned about the law. He just almost didn't come down there. But eventually, in 1993, he passed a polygraph test, a very strenuous lie detector test, was one of the best examiners in the world, and he passed it with flying colors. But he had already served time in prison by that time. He was the only bad boy on the crew. And so, all of us passing lie detector tests. Of course, our stories never did very much. Some of us had a little different idea of what it looked like, but only a very slightly different idea. And everything was pretty much right down the line. And there was 6 of us, and of course Travis wasn't there after he'd been hit by the beam, but that started it right there. I mean, that unique experience. But since then, 22 years later, in 1997, I just happened to be on hand, not down the valley. I was still on the mountain. I was in Prescott, actually. In fact, I had gone to visit one of my friends, Alan Dallas, who was on the crew, in 75. And he wasn't home. He lived with his parents. He wasn't home. His parents weren't home, so I left. I was on my way to Phoenix anyway, but I had gone up on this hill, which is actually a mountain about 8,000 feet, and I had a good beta camera with me, a professional beta Sony camera. I was trying to get video of the Hale-Bopp comet. Well, a little to my right, anyway, I wasn't getting real good results even with that good camera, because it was just, the comet was just too dim and just wasn't coming out. Anyway, I noticed this couple of lights coming up on to my right a little bit, not very far to the right, in my field of vision. And I sat there and watched it as more lights came on, and then more. And pretty soon there was 6, and at one point there was 7, but then it went back to 6. And this thing came up. It went a little. I didn't go right over the top of me. Went off to the right, to the east a little. But I could clearly distinguish a solid shape in between. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about that. The skeptics have said, no way, that was just contrast effect. Well, I've done a lot of research on contrast effect since, and contrast effect is real. But contrast effect will just as easily hide something that is there, as well as make you think that something's there that isn't there. So it works both ways. But the thing of it was when I saw this thing, there was still a tinge of twilight in the sky. And even if there wasn't, a nighttime sky, especially in the mountains, is not black. It's a dark blue, and something that is black or a silhouette of something shows up quite plainly. Now in the valley, maybe it didn't show up quite so good because down there the air is thicker and there's a lot more light pollution. But on that hilltop, I was very distinct. And this thing came up over and to the right of me, and when it came kind of out of the northwest, but then it went almost due south, and I was just standing there watching it, my mouth wide open. I noticed that this thing was headed south, and there was this breeze blowing straight on the back of my neck, a rather stiff breeze, almost a wind. And knowing a little bit about, weather and those things, especially the jet stream, which I'd already been familiar with, I knew that the higher in elevation you go, the stronger the wind is. Well, it was hitting, 20, 25 miles an hour right on the back of my neck. So I calculated up that I did a thing called a snap triangulation, which is a rather crude, but if you're good at it, and I was pretty good at the time, you can find the size of something and how high it is and the size of it and the speed of it with snap triangulation. That's where you create a triangulation by stepping left or right, say 10 feet or 20 feet, and then you have a timing, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever you choose, and then you calculate. I'm pretty good at math. And you calculate, the height and the width and then the speed, which I had done. And judging on that, I realized that this thing was a third of a mile wide. It could have been a little less, a little more, but pretty close to that. Yeah. And I estimated through that, it is still an estimation because it's not exact. I estimated it was doing in excess of 60 miles an hour maybe as much as 70. And later on, as it went further away, I did another calculation, and it was obviously going faster, but it was also a lot higher, which made sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that has been substantiated since. The very next day, after this thing disappeared to the south, I even chased it for a while in my truck. I never did catch up to it, but I kept it in sight.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, since I was in the valley by that time, the Phoenix, I waited around, got me a hotel room, and I went to the weather station there, a TV station. They couldn't tell me much. I finally got a hold of the National Weather Service, and they sent me some material, which I didn't get for a couple of days, but it was a weather map and a wind directional map, or chart, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I didn't have any knowledge. Peter Davenport had not put out this mass witnessed precise direction. It came up with a map, which he called the UFO path map.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that at the time, but just from my own self, knowing where it came from out of the northwest and then gone south and so on, it looked to be right on top of the prevailing wind, or not the prevailing winds. The prevailing winds are out of the southwest, but it came out of the northwest and then south, which is kind of totally contrary to what's supposed to happen that time of year. It was an anomaly, and I learned from the charts that I got a couple of days later that it wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't usual at all. And what's weird is that nobody's picked up on this in all this time. Not the skeptics, not the believers, not anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years later, 2 years ago, I started putting together all this in a writing, and
Well, what took you so long? What took you so long to put this all together? Was it just kind of bouncing around in the back of your head, and you weren't sure what to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, I kept researching. 5 to 10 years later, I started doing on-site research. I went to Nevada, Boulder City, and which is first, and then you come into Henderson, and then North Las Vegas. And according to the way this thing came, and by then I'd learned that there was a UFO path map was then finally available on the internet. That was just a few months later, actually, that Peter Davenport posted that. And then I had something to go by, and then I realized it was exactly on the exact path of the thing, and the speed of the wind mm-hmm. was precise to what I had already calculated and knew, and then find out on the weather charts. And to me, it was just, not even to me, but in actuality, the paths are identical. They're identical, both in elevation, which changed from 15,000 feet over the mountains down to 9,000 feet above surface over Phoenix, and then lower than that, going further south, and then it slowly started curving to the southeast after that. And it's all laid out there on the documentation. And the thing is, you can't refute the weather documentation because it's not predictions. It's after the fact.
Right.
So it's precise, and you can't argue with it. And believe it or not, even though I had an article, a scientific abstract that came out in the MUFON Journal here this month, mm-hmm. I haven't gotten one negative comment.
Oh, really?
I'm surprised. Yeah. I've gotten a lot of positive, but no mm-hmm. negative. And, my take on that, judging from some of the things I've heard, is that people who would be negative or just say, I don't care about documentation. I know it was extraterrestrial. Mm-hmm. And even though I haven't heard from them, I know that a lot of those kind of people would stay with that, but they would look at the documentation and they would realize that it's solid, it's irrefutable. What are you going to do at that point? Yeah. You can still say nonsense. I believe it was extraterrestrial, but they have in the back of their mind that this is proven. Extraterrestrial isn't proven. And of course, airplanes is, by the skeptics isn't proven.
It still qualifies as a UFO.
Yeah, it certainly does, because I still don't know what it was. All I know, it was carried on the wind. That's the only thing that's a fact. And that is a fact, but what it was, I have no idea.
Was it really carried on the wind, or do you think, like you had intimated last week, and I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that maybe it was something that was just happened to be going at the same pace of the wind and in the direction?
The only thing it could possibly have been, other than something that would just float on the wind like a balloon, which is my pet theory, is extraterrestrial deliberately doing so. Right. Because it wasn't just the exact same direction, because this was curving, curve and curve. It was like a reverse S shape. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it was the same speed.
Yeah.
And it was the same elevation all the way from one end to the other. When you put all that together, you've got some pretty, so much exactness that it was either man-made or it was a very clever extraterrestrial vehicle, deliberately looking as though it was following the wind, the speed and the direction and elevation precisely.
Yeah, I think that you obviously can't say one way or the other, but one does have to wonder, because UFOs are often noticed using the climate, the atmosphere, the weather as a way to sort of guise itself. It hides in and out of clouds. At nighttime, against the backdrop of stars, a little dot moving around, isn't exactly conspicuous.
Yes, so, I know that. That is very, very true. And
so could they be
very
used,
could
used
be extraterrestrial. It's entirely possible.
Yeah. Now,
but,
this is not...
I made a joke. I made one joke. I just want to say this real quick.
Yeah.
I made a joke about that because, like I said, my pet peeve, or not peeve, my pet theory is that it was man-made. But the joke is this. So aliens came blasting across the vastness of space just to leisurely float down the verde of Arizona's upper wind currents.
Right.
Well, I hope it brought enough beer and moon screen.
Maybe they're just getting a kick out of all this, I always have this pet theory. It wasn't mine. I heard it somewhere from someone else before, but that a lot of these UFOs are really just alien students, university students coming here to study those weird human beings. And we're not supposed to interfere with them. They get close, we hide a little bit. If they see us on occasion, no big deal, as long as they don't really know that we're here and can prove it. And they come in, they do their thing, they watch us, they test us, and then they move on. Wouldn't that be similar to the experience that Travis supposedly had, right? That it was sort of like, well, I guess that case there was an accident. It seemed there was an accident there, but
yeah, there is a big difference between these two events.
Yeah.
Travis didn't see the Phoenix lights. I don't think he's seen anything actually. I've talked to him here and there. I don't think he's ever even experienced anything. Now, before his incident, he had seen some things, but he was never very close and never was abducted or anything. I've never been abducted. And I'm a realist, and so I treated his case, our experience with him, as on basis of reality, and it proved out in every respect. But now the Phoenix lights, when you put the same reality to it, you get the wind alignment, and whether it was extraterrestrial or not is up in the air. But the only thing definite is whatever it was precisely going along with the wind, just like a balloon would. That's all you can say.
Okay, so that skeptical nature of yours obviously plays a part into it, and it's a healthy skepticism. So,
well, I call it I'm a realist.
A realist. Okay.
See, I don't believe in skepticism, because skepticism is actually a negative belief system. It is a belief system.
So you think that skepticism is on par with debunker or debunking?
Well, there's two kinds of debunkers. Mm-hmm. And over the years, I've been able to put together some very, very different concepts about debunking. Now, there are several debunkers out there today. There's Robert Schaefer, Michael Shermer, Tony Ortega, and of course the one I'm very familiar with is Philip J. Klass. But now, Michael Shermer did a treatment on the Phoenix Lights second event. Okay. And in my opinion, he very solidly proved and of course backed up by the U.S. Air Force, that those second event lights, which appeared over the Estrella mountain range, were flares. And I've since done a lot of research that shows that. I mean, there's so many things that show that. For instance, without going into a lot of detail, any bright glaring light will always look extremely closer. All you have to do is take headlights on a car. If you're on a long stretch of highway and you see headlights a mile away, they totally engulf their host vehicle. They're 25, 50 times larger than the vehicle, than they should be. And every single time, it doesn't ever change.
Yeah.
And so bright glaring lights, they have to be bright. They have to be glaring. And the more glaring they are, the more of that effect you get. But, those lights over the Estrellas, they were 70 miles behind where people thought they were.
So what you're saying is that the flares where they supposedly are assumed to have been were actually much further away, and perhaps then not flares, because the report was that, oh yes, we dropped flares there, but then that wouldn't make sense with what you're saying, because you're saying they're actually, the source light was actually further away. Is that am I following you?
No. I think you're slightly misunderstanding.
Okay.
For instance, Dr. Lynn Katay, okay? She's the one that really pushes that second event thing as being the return of the original first event object.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks, along with a lot of people who go along her, believers, that the lights were actually in front of the Estrellas, possibly even in front of the South Mountain. But according to the research I've done, aside from the Air Force is coming forward and saying that they were flares, in spite of Shermer's treatment on that, my research tells me, just as I said, bright glaring lights will always appear very much closer, and not just a little bit, a lot closer, very, very much closer. As a matter of fact, I'm a bit of an astronomer, and I have an astronomer friend, a retired NASA astronomer who has worked with me concerning the astronomy aspects of things that I have come up with. Mm-hmm. Stars in the sky, the very closest stars to us, which are still incredibly far away, unbelievably far away, even the closest stars, they appear, because of this concept, this theory, I guess you have to say, but it's proven, that bright distance lights appear very much closer. Well, headlights appear, like I say, 25, 50 times larger than they really are just at a mile away. Mm-hmm. But the stars, even the closest stars, appear to be over 3,000 times larger than they really are. And if it wasn't for that, we couldn't see a single star. The sun would be the only thing we could see.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the distant galaxies, which a few there are actually visible to naked eye, mm-hmm. they are billions of times larger, than they really are.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you a question from the chat room here, Mike, while we can, because I don't want to forget. I promised to get some questions in tonight. So this is from Neutron, and he asked, we're going to go back into your story a little bit earlier here. Did anyone in the truck verify their watches to see if you had missing time during the abduction?
The differences in the Travis Walton abduction and our experience is so much different from a lot of, especially new abduction events. There's really no comparison. One of the things is, in answer to his question, no, nobody had even an inkling of any missing time. Not Walton, Travis had missing time. He only remembers 20 minutes to an hour mm-hmm. Out of 5 days and some hours. So you can call that missing time, but it's not mysteriously missing time, because what's mysterious to him is the fact that when he was returned, he thought it was the same night. He thought it was a couple hours later. Then he found out that it was 5 days later, and he flipped out.
See, that when all this was happening, where was the realist Mike? How was the realist Mike processing this?
Well, when we saw that bolt hit Travis, I panicked. Well, everybody panicked. but I was driving the truck. So actually, I had turned the truck off because I couldn't see what it was that they were seeing, because there was an incline there, and it was up in the air, and also it was above the ground, and the ground at that point was several, like 20 or 30 feet higher than I could see. Although I couldn't see what they were seeing because it was to the right. I would come through this clearing. I could see this light flickering, and like everybody else, it's very strange. But we come across into that clearing, I couldn't see it, and I wasn't immediately scared. I just thought, oh, well, whatever it is, I don't know, forest fire, whatever. I turned the truck off.
Yeah.
Travis took off. I thought some of the other guys would take off and run up there too. And I thought, well, turn the truck off. Once I see what it is, maybe I'll go up there and look at it too, whatever it is. Once I turned the truck off and could lean down to where I could see it, oh my God. Oh.
Did your brain freeze? I mean, was it like the part of your mind who's saying, wait a minute, this just can't be real, and then the other part of your mind that's seeing what's in front of your eyes?
Well, like I say, I was a realist, and you asked the question, how does my realistic brain process this? Well, for a while, it didn't do too good of a job, but it took me a while, and I took off down the road, and we went approximately a quarter of a mile to the point to where I could see that it was not chasing us.
Well, this was immediately after
Travis was struck.
Yeah.
It blew him back, and it's funny. We say 10 feet, but we're talking about his feet. Some people, and the skeptics say, well, that's nonsense, because there's some people that say 15 to 20 feet. And I say, well, let's graph this out. He was standing, his feet went back approximately 10 feet. Okay, graph it out, animate it. Where would his head be? If his feet were 10 feet back, where would his head be? He was, a little over 6 feet tall. Where would his head be? Well, that put his head at about 16 plus feet away, right? Right. That's all it takes to dispel that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Our estimates of him are accurate, very accurate, surprisingly accurate.
So you took off down the road, and as most people know, you did eventually stop. But what was going through your mind at that point? Because, again, you don't know what you're dealing with it. So how can you be rational when you don't know what you're dealing with?
Well, I was trying to be rational, and I'm pretty rational. I don't panic usually. I panicked briefly. By the time we'd even gotten an eighth of a mile down the road, I was already starting to think. But initially, yes, it was panic. And it was panic based on him being struck, not what we saw. What we saw was amazing. It was actually beautiful. And everybody there thought the same thing. It looked like a brand new shiny car. It didn't look like a car, in the same respect. It was beautiful in the same way. It was lighted. It was shiny. It was
captivating.
Yeah, captivating. And gosh, that was just amazing, extremely amazing. But what panicked me was when Travis got hit with that beam and it blew him back like that. I mean, he hit the ground. He was dead. I mean, he just looked like he was dead.
Yeah.
And when he hit the ground, he didn't move after that. He hit so hard that he even bounced a little.
Yeah.
And the guys expressed that too. But
you don't think he was knocked unconscious because of the impact? He was knocked unconscious because of being struck by this light or whatever it was?
I don't know what caused him to be unconscious.
Okay.
Now, I know if it had been electricity, damn right, he would have been knocked unconscious.
Well, Travis did say when he was on the show in the winter, he mentioned that he wonders now. He's, making it clear he's speculating, but he wonders if, in fact, there was lightning that struck this UFO and passed the UFO, which worked like a lightning rod, and then hit him, and that in fact it was a lightning strike or like a plasma strike. What do you think from what you remember?
Yeah, that's something I that's the first time I've heard that. Now, Travis hasn't told me that himself. What he's saying there is possible, and he's speculating. He's probably answering a question, trying to answer it as best he can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been asked so many different variations of questions over the years that naturally he's going to start wondering about things. He was wondering about things before he was ever returned. But lightning coming down from the sky, hitting the UFO, and then coming through him, vaguely possible. The trouble is there was no clouds in the sky, so it would have had to been like dry lightning or something.
Heat lightning, maybe, or no, I guess not. Well, I think what I like about it is that it sort of does fit that narrative of this was an accident.
Oh yes,
and
I've come to that conclusion.
What is it? What is it that you really think tells you it was an accident?
Practically everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing about it that wasn't leading to an accident. It just very much seems that way.
Mm-hmm.
We have no proof of that. In fact, all of these polygraph tests that we've taken in the past are not really proof of anything. Just like anybody else who has an experience. Most don't even pass lie detector tests. But those who do, it still doesn't prove anything. There's no solid evidence. No solid proof. Nothing. It's just people's word, and the more people there are, the better the word. If they pass polygraph tests, especially skeptic-sponsored polygraph tests, it becomes more and more believable. But there's still no proof.
Right. Well, I know memory can be slippery, and I know it's malleable over time. I've experienced that myself. You know, memory can warp a little bit, but when things are traumatic, the brain remembers them differently, and even on a less traumatic scale. Let's say you're in a supermarket, an open supermarket, and then some random dude just starts yelling the Macarena really loud, and you and a bunch of people just turn around and look at him like, what is this guy doing? If the next day, you tell me this, I'm not going to doubt you, right? Yeah, I'm just going to take your word for it because it was something extraordinary that you noticed. And then I could take a bunch of other people who were there that day, give them polygraph tests. You're all going to come to the same conclusion that, yes, we saw some crazy guy singing the Macarena in the market. And in all likelihood, that would hold up in court. And now here you guys are saying, whoa, this is something even more extraordinary. We did not misinterpret this because you did have time to process this. And you saw it, you left, and then you thought about it, you came back, right?
Yeah. Well, there was 7 of us altogether. The 6th, just the initial incident after he was gone. We all had each other to play on. Yeah. And the thing of it is, there wasn't an opportunity to change things because several people wandered off. Steve Pierce, for instance, he showed up for the polygraph test. After that, he split. We couldn't even find him after that. He was gone. And when he came back around, his story was still the same as ours. So, a lot of corroboration there.
Yeah. Now, during this process, as I asked you earlier on, how has your spirituality changed? How has your view of the world changed? Now that you personally believe that this was a UFO, an extraterrestrial craft, you do believe it was ET, right? Of some sort?
Yeah. You mean the Walton experience?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Oh.
No.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure he does. In fact, we've talked about this at length several times.
So when you guys have referred to or specifically Travis, to the beings, you're not saying that they're necessarily aliens, right? They could be humans then?
Well, I think they were a blend. I think the human beings were human beings because they seem to be the ones in charge. Okay. The human types, the Nordics as they call them, took over. These strange little whitish, short people with big eyes and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They had him first, and he woke up, and he attacked them, and then he ran away from them. And the Nordics showed up, took it over, and took Travis away from him. And whatever they did after that, they did. But these Nordics just look too human. Now, I'm an artist. I did all the illustrations for all this stuff. And well, not all the illustrations. There have been a few other people. But those little aliens were probably really aliens. But the what do you call them? The Nordics were in charge.
Wait, so Mike, let me just interject because just so I don't get confused. So I was asking about extraterrestrials, but now, so you're saying Nordics, humans, something else. So are you saying that they're not from an off planet, or that they're all things that may actually be originated from Earth?
Well, the human-looking people look so human that they most likely were. They may not have been, but they likely were. They could have been very easily. They could have been, I don't know where they came from. Everybody attributes Area 51, but who knows? But they were so close to human. They could have been human. They could have been from Earth. They were in charge. They took over, and their technology, their everything could have been human technology. But I think the alien types that he encountered were aliens, extraterrestrials.
Okay. So and that has to change your worldview, doesn't it?
Well, kind of, a little. If you're talking spirituality here, which you asked me earlier, I was born a Mormon. I was born into a Mormon culture, Snowflake, Arizona.
Yeah.
But I had already begun to kind of doubt that. I didn't doubt the society. I didn't doubt that it was a good way to be brought up. What I started doubting was the factuality of it. And being a realist, my father was a realist. Put it this way. I'm not a skeptic. I'm not a believer, even in religion. However, being a realist, I'm one of these people who take up this supposedly skeptical concept of don't make up your mind. Don't say that something is or isn't if you just don't have enough knowledge to know. And that's what I think about religion. I'm not an atheist. I'm not a believer. I'm not an agnostic. I just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is.
So coming to the belief that there was this very strange interaction between humans, aliens, and your friend Travis and yourself, that didn't change the way you saw the world. At this point, you were already in that, as you described us, that non-camp?
Yeah. Well, spiritually, that's where I was. I was still hanging on to the Mormon religion. I was a priest in the Mormon religion. And at one point, a fervent believer, but I grew up. and the reality took hold. And eventually I just wandered away from the church. Now, I don't poo-poo it. I don't put it down.
Yeah.
A structure of belief like that makes for good people. Just like it does in other religions, people who are very strong Catholics, very fervent Baptists, whatever. The more strongly they are religiously, they seem to be better people.
But do you think this opened the door to your accepting of other paranormal phenomena after this experience?
Yes.
It did.
But it doesn't make me believe that all these things I have a couple of friends who just believe everything that comes along, anything and everything. And I say, man, what's wrong with you guys? Our skies can't be that full of UFOs, extraterrestrials. It's just not logical. It's not logical at all.
Right. Well, I don't know if you had an experience like this. It sounds like you did, but there was one time we were out camping on James Gilliland's ESETI compound, and we were passing through. You donate a little bit of cash. This is years ago, in a box. We camped out for the night. It was just a place for us to crash on a road trip, but we thought, what a cool place to go to, right? And this one guy there, he was fervent that the aliens communicate. You can see them. He brought his red laser pointer in the sky, and he's doing all these things, and then we see this light coming, and I hear him going, "Oh my gosh, it's them, they're coming, it's coming, I told you." So he's blinking his thing, he's blinking his laser, and we're looking at each other like, "Oh my gosh, is this real?" Kind of getting that like early goosebump feeling. And as the light comes closer, it starts flickering, and then you see it's a helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And then it passes overhead and goes away. And I think that's what you mean. There's a difference between wanting to believe, and I think, and having almost a need to believe.
There's a very big difference.
Yeah.
A very big difference. And I have really been affected by that more than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm the only one out of all the tens of thousands of people seeing the Phoenix Lights that ever bothered to look at the weather documentation at all. Why is that? Now, I happen to know why the skeptics didn't. See, the skeptics did. They knew. But the skeptics who treated it, who gave a treatment to it, have a completely different agenda, and I'd like to get into that.
Well, you know what? Let's do that. What do you think that agenda was or is?
Well, it started with Philip Klass. And you mentioned to me earlier seeing this video where we were versus, you might say, Philip Klass on Larry King Live.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the person who did a believability study of that claimed that Phil was lying. Well, I already knew he was. That was so obvious. I mean, at one point in that show, I accused him directly of being a disinformation specialist from Washington, D.C. Now, he lived in Washington, D.C., so he was, from Washington, D.C., but I was trying to make the point that he was government, right? Thing of it is, he didn't deny that. He didn't deny it at all. He just got angry, and he completely lost his cool. I won't say it here on the air, but you're a GD liar, Mike Rogers. I've caught you in falsehood after falsehood. And his body language, his attitude and everything just said, he's reacting to this in a ridiculous way.
You doth protest too much. There's something going on here. Right.
And the thing of it is, here's the thing. The next thing he did, after Travis had a few words with him, he says, "Okay, Larry, let's go into some hard evidence," he said. Hard evidence.
Okay, and I just so everybody knows, I'm going to put a link to this YouTube video where there is a commentary on the body language of this.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's in the chat, KGRA chat room. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
Anyway, he pointed out that he had written a book. I already knew he'd written this book. I'd read it and I'd researched the whole shop, called The Public Deceived. And he says, that on the 3 days after Travis disappeared, Mike Rogers and Travis's brother Dwayne did an interview with a ufologist named Fred Sylvanus. And he says, during that interview, Dwayne said, he says, "I have no fear for his life. I have no fear for him at all. I just wish I was with him." And then he says, Sylvanus says, "You hope he has." Actually, he didn't say that on the air, but that's the thing from his book. You hope he has. Mm-hmm. Now, what he said is, I didn't show any concern for Travis' life at all. His brother didn't, and I didn't, which is completely bogus. Now, he gave in his book, he said that Fred Sylvanus says, "You hope he has," to Gawain's remarks right there. And very clear on that tape. Many people listen to it. Anybody can. It's on the internet. It's in his book. it's still in his book the same way. He gave that hope you have, which happened to be something I said. He gave that to Fred Sylvanus, which automatically showed that Phil Klass was trying in an obvious way, and it could be proven by people anybody wanted to, that he was trying to make me out to be a liar.
Well,
but he was doing it in an obvious way that could be proven wasn't true.
It was
and he did that with a number of things.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly, he was playing into the hand of debunkers, sure, but quote unquote skeptics. Just like Stanton Friedman says, he was making proclamation, not investigation. And so by him trying to falsify the record, someone like Michael Shermer, another debunker, could come along and say, hey, look, this is what this thing from Philip Klass says, who's a respected person in the science community, and therefore he doesn't have to investigate anymore. That's it. End of story.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
see, that's the skeptical attitude. That's not the realist attitude. That's the skeptical attitude, and that's a belief system, and they're just as full of bias as these hardcore believers are.
Right. I think that's what people do. It's almost religious in its own right, isn't it?
Yes. Skepticism, especially the Michael Shermer type skepticism, the Robert Schaefer type skepticism. The thing of it is, Michael Shermer did a treatment on the Phoenix Lights second event, like I said earlier, and I completely agreed with him and he was telling the truth. But you see, the guy who did the skeptical treatment on the first event of the Phoenix Lights, just like Phil Klass did years ago.
Yep.
Tony Ortega was his name, and Philip Klass were both what I call pseudo debunkers. And there's a lot of people who have called them that, but the thing of it is, none of them, in fact, the word pseudo means not, or pretending to be.
Pretending to be, right.
And how can you be somebody who's hard set against disproving all UFO things if you're pretending to be a debunker? It doesn't make any sense. I started saying that a long, long time ago, even before the Larry King show. Pseudo debunkers, and I think people picked up on that, and it's become a common thing to say. They still don't understand what I meant. What I was saying was Phil Klass was not a debunker. He pretended to be a debunker. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike.
What he was doing was he was taking. In fact, let me do it this. Let's do it quicker. A pseudo debunker's job is, and considering that they are government people, and they were given this job through government, and of course Phil Klass was in Washington D.C. and he had direct contact with the government all the time, and he will say, "Well, that's nonsense. It's ridiculous to think that the government would be trying to put these things down. It is ridiculous that they're trying to put these things down, because that's not what they're trying to do. And the pseudo debunkers, that's not what they're trying to do. And this is their job description. They're instructed to make their explanations look almost feasible, almost. And they present their explanation in a very overbearingly stated way. And through absurd accusation and undue derision, make the lead characters of the most highest profile event out to be living martyrs. The result of that is intelligent people can reason the more likely. They absolutely despise arrogance shoved in their face. So what the living martyrs are proclaiming, what they're saying, will be taken by most people as the truth. And the ultimate purpose of that is this, because that is growing. The intention of that is that it will grow. And ultimate purpose is the growing world belief, thus spawned by that process, that that America most likely has alien technology, and therefore it is hopeless to make war against America, making it a relatively costless conventional deterrent, and thereby saving us millions and millions of dollars and countless American lives by not having to fight wars or skirmishes. And so they truly are pseudo debunkers.
Yeah,
because they're making people believe. They're making the world believe.
Right.
And my take on that is this: terrorists and other people, we shouldn't be going around saving their lives, because we saved their lives in the process of saving ours and all this money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think terrorists, especially, they're completely responsible for their own suicidal demise. It's not our job to protect our enemies, regardless of how much is saved, especially with distortions to American citizens. I believe in the truth. Absolutely the truth.
I believe in the truth as well. And the truth is we have to wrap it up because we are at the end, Mike.
Oh, already? Wow.
I know. We're gonna have to rearrange it. We'll do something again later down the line, because it seems that we just can't seem to get enough in our conversations.
Well, it's a big subject, and I'm really researching. I have an awful lot to say, but yeah.
No, I love it.
Can't do it in an hour.
And really quick, you have 30 seconds to answer this question. I promise I'd get this chat question in. The question is from Libertas. Mike, do you have what was the initial opinion of your families after the abduction experience?
Of my who?
Of
my
your
family?
Family member. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, they all believed it because they knew that I was an honest person. They just believed it straight out. All of them.
So let's leave it at that. Thank you so much, Mike Rogers, for coming on once again to Paranormal Now.
You bet. Thank you, Alan.
All right, brother. Well, let's stay in touch, and we'll work out something again in the future.
You bet. Thank you.
All right. That was Mike Rogers. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now, broadcasting live Tuesdays, 8 to 10 p.m. EST on KGRradio.com, your official contact for the best in alternative talk radio. To find out more, you can go to KGRradio.com/paranormalnow or paranormalnow.net, and on social media, Twitter @paranormal_now. Special thanks to Race and Bill at KGRA, and until next time, tune in, because we will be getting even more mysterious than usual next week, 8 p.m. Tuesday. Live in the mystery.